Why, hello, everyone. Welcome to Jolene's Happy Time Craftcast. I am indeed Jolene, and it is wonderful to see you today. It is I don't know if it's cold, but I'm cold here in Minnesota. And as I'm coming to you from my office, I have to let you know that I am snuggling with the most amazing quilt that my mom made. And I just showed it for you listening and not watching, but I don't know if she picked this up at an auction and refurbished it or if she built it from scratch. It was like a day where she stopped by and she dropped off like 6 things that she had made. And I forgot to inquire where this one came from. So, Mom, if you're listening, I love it. It's the pink and blue one and it's tied and it's just the best. So anyway, wherever you all are, I hope you are having a wonderful week. I am excited to talk to this week's guest. She and I have in common that we were both featured in Strawberry Moon magazine, the art journaling magazine that I talk about all the time. If you are not familiar with Strawberry Moon, please acquaint yourself because it is a beautiful magazine, so well edited and published and absolutely beautiful. Suzanne Early, the publisher, does such an amazing job. And I'll be sure to link in the show notes where you can find it, but it's called Strawberry Moon Magazine, and it's a magazine for art journalers. But my guest today, she and I were both featured in a recent issue. And so I invited her to be on the show today. So Clementina Kura-Kura is an artist who is passionate about art journaling and also shadow puppets. And I am excited to learn more about that. So I'm going to pull her forward here in just a second so she can tell us more. But she does all the things. She has an obsession with leaves. She does jelly plate printing, paper cutting, and she's recently gotten into embroidering on paper, something that I too find quite fascinating. So I know you will do an amazing job in welcoming Clementina to the podcast today. Hi, Clementina.
Hi, Jolene.
Thank you
Hi.
so much for being here. And I forgot to mention, you should tell folks where you are streaming from right now.
I am streaming from my workshop, who I'm based in Santa Maria de Palautordera. That is a small village not too far from Barcelona.
That's amazing.
In Spain. So yeah, that's where I am now.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being an international guest today. I really, really appreciate it. So, okay. So in my introduction, I talked a little bit about, so you wrote this really great article about your leaf obsession, but then also, you have an interest in shadow puppets. What is that? Help us understand.
Shadow puppets is an ancient form of theater that basically works with light. That means that when you walk on the street and you have the strongest light on earth, that's the sun, you have your shadow cast on the floor or on a wall. So using that idea, that's how this theater works. You have an object and you have a light, and usually you have a screen where the shadow is casted. So usually, and I say usually because that's a traditional way, but contemporary theater makes a lot of variations. You have the audience on the other side of the screen. So the audience sees only the cast shadows.
Right. And this is something that you make. You make them.
I make both the puppets and I manipulate them, because I said you need an object to cast the shadow. It could be your own body. Some people use just hands to make figures. And what I do is I use puppets. That means that I cut out figures to cast those shadows. So
that's so awesome. So would you say that is kind of how you got your interest and drive for paper cutting? Are those two things connected?
Yes, somehow they are connected somehow. Because I think I loved paper cutting before, but I never got to do it until I had to do puppets. And then until when I started cutting out puppets for shows, I said, I want to do more for them this. So I started paper cutting as a passion. So
Right.
yeah,
So we call it, when it's a really intricate, object to cut out, we call it fussy cutting. Do you call it fussy cutting as well?
I never heard of the term, but it
Okay.
is really fussy cutting.
Yeah.
What you do. Well, in fact, one of the places where traditional shadow puppet is made,
Hmm.
or where it's one of the possibilities of where this art was born, because there's a
Hmm.
lot of discussion. It's for sure somewhere in Southeast Asia, but well, some people say it's India, some people say it's China, some people
Sure.
it's Indonesia. So I was lucky enough to go to Indonesia, and that's where I got more acquainted with the art, and I decided, this is what I want to do. I want to do shadow puppets. There they use very intricate work, like very fussy cutting, but they
Yes.
don't do it with a knife. They do it with some very old tools made out of iron, and I would
Really?
say that's really fussy cutting. Really, I have a puppet with me here, like a
Oh,
traditional one. That
okay.
probably it's hard to appreciate for the cutting.
Oh, for those of you listening, it's very detailed and it's got like junctions at the limbs, right? So that you can move arms and legs.
Yeah,
It's
arms basically.
wow.
And yeah, and this is not paper, it's leather, so it's even harder to cut.
Oh,
That's why they need some sharper knives made out of iron, kind of sculpt.
Clementina, that's not what I was expecting.
Oh,
That's really amazing.
it is really amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the only puppet I ever carved. In fact, it's not cutting, it's carving. What they
Okay.
call
All
it,
right.
it's more than it's carving, because it's not paper. But yeah, after this is the only puppet I managed to do in 1 year studying there. Of course,
Okay.
people there do it much faster, but yeah, that's
Right.
really, after
Right.
this I got into really fussy cutting with paper,
Right.
because then it was
You
easy,
know,
really easy.
I like fussy cutting. I think that so one of the things that I do in my art journaling is I think it's really hard. It's hard for me to art journal anywhere but at my desk. Like I don't travel really well with my art journal because I tend to have too many supplies like at the ready. But what I can do while I'm traveling is I like to take a little folder of objects and fussy cut them out and then put them in another little container so they're ready for me to pull when I'm ready to art journal. Now, my husband has different opinions about all the little teeny tiny scraps of paper that end up all over the place. But you know what? That's why we have vacuums. So I stand by my decision. So
That's a good one. I would stand by your
yes,
decision too. I
thank
like
you.
very much.
So, of all the things that you do, then, do you have a favorite project or medium or technique? Because, as I mentioned, you have a leaf obsession. You also do the paper cutting and the jelly plate printing. But of all those things, do you have a favorite?
It's very hard for me, because one of the
Yeah.
things I like about art journaling is precisely that everything is allowed, and
Yes.
that's what really, like, really I like.
Agreed.
It's hard for me to take a decision,
Mhm.
and I like very much mixing. That's why mixed
Yeah.
media, I discovered mixed media was like, wow, I can
Yes.
exactly get
Me
paper and
too.
thread, put it together. So yeah, I mean, between jelly printing and paper cutting, that's a hard decision.
Mm.
But mm, I would say, I would say paper cutting,
Okay.
basically because I can go for it much easier than with the jelly plate.
Right? I agree. I think sometimes I have a block in getting out my jelly plate and all of the supplies just because it makes such a mess. And I
Exactly.
don't care about the mess so much. It's the space. Like all of the space that I take up from my prints and my supplies and the drawing. And it's nonsense, of course, right? Like once I do it, I'm so happy that I did.
True.
Um, Right, but I like the little grab and goes sometimes as well. And like you, it's hard for me, it's hard to pick a favorite, but I do run in phases. Do you run
Ah,
in phases where like I'll really be into something for a little bit and then, I'll transition and be into something else?
yeah, yeah, it also happens to me. It's true. I never thought of
Yes.
it, but you're right. I have many pages, like I'm using a lot of collage. And
Oh,
then
yeah.
I use, when you mentioned traveling, when I go out traveling, I use a lot collage, for example, because it's easy, quite clean if I use glue of bar.
Right.
So, but then if I'm in my studio at home, I like more to take paints and then mix the
Right.
acrylic.
All the messy things, right? All the messy
Exactly.
things. So you and I also have in common that
Mm.
pretty high on our list of things that we are interested in or do is that we repurpose materials. So what are some ways that you repurpose materials?
I don't know where I could start because I repurpose. I mean, like one of my sayings is the best material you have, because sometimes I'm asked, what's the best material for this? Like
Yeah,
the best material is what you have handy, because
I
then
love
you're ready to go and do it. And if you
that.
have to go and look for it, then that's not the best material. And that means that you can go and grab whatever you have home. And like what I do use a lot is I keep a lot of boxes, like
Yeah.
boxes, because that's a good material to do many things, like puppets. We have I run a workshop that I love, which is do your shadow puppets out of recycled materials, whatever
Sure.
you have at home, precisely because, and that's something that goes along my character, that
Mm,
sometimes I messed up and I missed something. So you get whatever plastic bottle, like a cereal box.
yeah.
It may not look nice, but when you cast the shadow, then
Mm,
it looks amazing. And when our journaling is somehow the same, I want to make
yeah.
some textures. What do I have handy? I mean, I have boxes I keep for texture, but what I
Yeah.
end up using is maybe what I had for breakfast in the morning, or the last papers I
Right.
grabbed from the shop.
I
So
totally agree with you. In fact, I think too, like, I think sometimes, like with any hobby or artistic endeavor or passion, there's the hobby of collecting all the things. And
mhm.
then there is the hobby of using all the things. And I'm trying really hard to challenge myself to use what I have before I go and get more things because I don't think, and I don't know if I should say this out loud, but I don't know if I could use all the things I have even in a lifetime, right? Because I have so many wonderful things. But I love repurposing all kinds of paper. I have a hard time throwing away like masking tape cardboard inserts because
Mhm.
I love the circle and I love using that on my gel plate, right? And I am with you. My friend Molly, she uses her Amazon soft-sided packages, the ones
Mhm.
that are made out of
Mhm.
recycled paper, and she uses them to clean her brayer when
Mhm.
she's jelly plate printing. And then once she's got enough of these kind of messy, she binds those into a book. And it is
Oh,
like the most amazing thing I've ever seen because it's so piecey and fibrous and just full of all of this random texture. And that's from the paint garbage, basically. So I love the idea of, finding new uses for old things.
I love what you're saying,
Yeah.
especially that they keep the rolls. I'm not the only one that they have a box full of those tapes.
Yes.
And sure, I agree, like we need to give life to things that would go to
Mhm.
garbage, because there's a lot of garbage already in the
Right,
world. We
right.
need to prevent them from getting there. And that's why I love junk journaling. I Most of my
Mhm.
journals made out of old papers. i
Yeah,
I keep my notes from school, from primary school and secondary school. And
really? That's a
I
great idea.
yeah, and recently I got very good paper I was using to take some notes from my
Mhm.
Latin classes. But the
That
paper
must have
was
been
so good.
beautiful. Yeah.
And then they are now, I made one of my recent journals was made out of these notes, because my mom said, you need to throw this and get it out from the home, because
Oh,
I
sure.
still have some things there. So I said,
Mhm.
okay, what can I do? I felt so bad about throwing them away. And
Yeah.
yes, I made some journals.
You've inspired me. I might actually use some of my kids' like
Ah,
elementary school notebook writings and fodder. I mean, I think I've kept every picture they've ever made, but I bet there's some good stuff inside of like because I'm sure there's a stack of tablets, one for, all of them that would be really cool, like in a base layer of an
I'm
art
sure.
journal project.
I'm
I was recently teaching a class, and it was an art journaling. It was collage. We were talking about collage, and folks were pulling from my supplies to make their collages. And I happened to notice that in the stack of supplies was my piano lesson notebook from when I was like 12, and I had to keep track of how often I was practicing the piano. And I saw my 12-year-old handwriting, in this stack of fodder. And it was all I could do not to like grab it out of there grab it out of their project and like keep it for my own. But I was like, okay, that's ridiculous. That's just silly. I'm sure there's more of this around. And, now they've got a little piece of Jolene nostalgia, like even though they didn't know it in like a base layer of their project. But do you ever have any kind of sentimentality about your scraps and the things that you use?
all the time. I mean, what you did, I would have not been able. If I had recognized that handwriting when I was 12, I would have wrapped it and put it
Right.
somewhere. I mean, so yeah, I think that was
I almost did. I almost did.
I couldn't have refrained. No, I'm super, super. Yes.
Mhm.
For example, at the moment, my daughter is 3, and she does a lot of scribbles.
Oh, sure.
I even keeping
You
some of
want
them
to keep them, right?
her. So yeah, so it's things from the past, as I told you, like my notes from
Mhm.
Latin to things now in the present. I'm
Right.
I'm 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 doing something I read also on Strawberry Moon about transforming your diary into art journal. Uh,
Yeah.
I did this year for the first time, and it's amazing because it allows me not to throw anything, really anything.
I
So
love that. We have like all this permission to just like keep all of our little stacks of stuff.
because
I love
then I
it.
know I will glue it down on that week's
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, no, I'm super sentimental about all my collage for
Right.
the. I really like keeping. For me, art journaling is also somehow related to really the journaling, the memory
Mhm.
keeping.
Yeah.
So most of the time, I try to put some
Mhm.
fodder that is related to something that's happening at that moment. So
Right.
it's important to me. Yeah.
Well, and I'm glad you mentioned Strawberry Moon Magazine again because your article, Leaf Obsession, can you tell us a little bit about? I mean, I know that you speak to connecting your artistic practice to nature and its relationship to your art. Can you talk a little bit about like what's the deal with the leaves and how is nature important to you in your art practice?
The deal with the leaves, it's something it just happened.
Yeah.
I mentioned in the article, I realized I was interested in leaves when I was living in Indonesia, when I was
Yeah.
studying shadow puppetry,
Yeah.
because the leaves there, it's completely different climate, completely
Mhm.
different part of the world. So
Yep.
the plants are completely different. So all of a sudden, I started paying attention
Mhm.
mainly to the shapes of the leaves, that they were very different and they were beautiful. They were really
I'm
beautiful.
sure. Mhm.
And I started getting obsessed to kind of keep that beauty with me. I tried everything. I laminated some leaves to try to make
Yeah.
some earrings. I basically stamped some of them and
Yeah.
scanned to keep with them. I tried everything, and then I came back to Barcelona. I was living in the city back then. And
Mhm.
for the first time, there's not a lot of nature in city, but the little nature that I could found, I then paid attention to leaves. And
Awesome.
because in this, well, in Europe there's 4
Mhm.
seasons, different to Indonesia. They have only 2 seasons. It's always
Right.
raining. So basically there it was mainly about the shapes of the leaves.
Mhm.
I came back to Europe and I paid attention to the shape of the leaves, the color that was changing through the seasons.
Mhm.
So, and then I started incorporating. picking up them when they were on the floor, trying to do things with them, incorporate them in my journals. And it was not until 1.5 years that I moved to this little town I was mentioning, which is very close to the mountains, 2 minute walk to a small forest, something different to what I had been living in Barcelona, in the city. But that I realized that I was very inspired and I was super relaxed when I was in nature, that it gave me positive vibes. So, nature, for a city girl like me, I'm a city
Yeah.
girl. I mean, I cannot deny that. Going for a small walk, 5 minutes on the forest, gave me the same positive vibes that art.
Right.
I was like, wow, I'm relaxed, I'm happy, I'm positive. I get a lot of inspiration. And of course, I'm surrounded by nature that
Mhm.
has all these shapes and colors. So that's when I realized I had to do something to put them together, especially for people who lived in the city. Uh,
Right.
that's why, like, just recently, I started a course that is making people, they can come from wherever they want, but mainly
Okay.
they come from the city, and then they get this space of connection with nature that
Yep.
they don't have in their daily lives. And
Mhm.
they have a kind of 2 hour walk, not 2 hour walk, because we do art also in nature. And then we come here to the studio and end up our pieces in a different way. So it's like a full morning where you get the two good things in one. So you get connected
Oh, yeah.
and you get to create art out of what we saw, what we found, what we smelled, everything uh,
Mhm.
in one. So for me, this recent discovery that
Yeah.
started with like with
Mhm.
discovering beauty in leaves, because there's a beautiful quote about how easy it is to appreciate beauty in a flower.
Yeah.
Flowers are beautiful, beautiful, different colors, amazing.
Right.
But sometimes it's not so easy to find how beauty a leaf is.
Right.
And
Well, I was actually inspired by your article. And, I live on a farm. And so what I did was I went around our property and I tried to collect a leaf from every variety of what we have trees and weeds and ferns and plants and all kinds of things, and I collected one variety of each and I put them in a really big dictionary, like a medical textbook, like 3,000 pages, and I've
Mhm.
been pressing them. And my vision is I'm going to create a coffee table book, and I think I'm going to do cyanotype sun printing, so that it can sit on the coffee table at our bed and breakfast. And it's just going to be called Big Raven Farm. And it's going to be the species that I found on my property. And thank you for
Oh,
the Leaf Obsession article, because I have all this really cool fodder right here, and I didn't really think about it in this kind of, like, being a historian of our space and what our property is like and all of the things that live here and how absolutely beautiful it is. So, I hope my cyanotype idea works. I can't imagine that it won't. But the other thing I think is really cool is using the gel plate to make a cyanotype like effect with like a really deep indigo and white. So more to come on that, but that idea is definitely percolating, and all of my samples are nice and squished.
I love it. I love it. I'm super super glad to hear about it, because
Yeah.
when I write the articles in Strawberry Moon, or when I
Mhm.
create sessions on art journaling, that's my main idea. Like, inspire others to get.
Yeah, it worked. Thank you.
I'm super looking forward to see the results. Honestly,
Yeah, I will definitely
they
share
just
them. And
uh,
Um, and and because of like this idea about, like, I loved the title about leaf obsession, and I love the way that you talk about it, because for me, I've been a city person too, and I've been living on a farm now for 4 years, and
Mhm.
it's just kind of like a little baby shift in the
Mm.
way that I see the world around me. and that there's just so much differentiation. Like I'm looking out the window right now and I can see, the leaves from the lilac bush next to the junipers, next to the cypress, next to the oak. Like it just, when it all comes together, it's really amazing.
Yeah, and for me, one of the things I'm learning now, because it's a new course I'm offering
Yeah.
of mixing art journaling and art nature, is that
Mm-hmm.
the first steps to care about nature and love it is to get to
Oh,
know it. And
sure.
when you are a city person, it's just a tree. You don't know what's the difference between
Right, right, right. I can see that. Mhm.
and once you start paying attention to the beauty of leaves, just as an example, then
Right.
you start differentiating, and maybe you want to learn the name.
Mhm.
And like, sorry, I know I will look very, very city girl, but I honestly, I'm not sure how this is called in English. Oh, dandelion. I'm not, or the ones that you blow and then they fly.
Oh, a dandelion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, I never knew the yellow flowers in the fields, white yellow flowers, were the same thing.
Mhm.
I never knew. And I got to know this year that I've been living here because of the leaves
Yeah.
that keep the same all through the year.
So you had like a big aha moment.
Completely was like, no way, this is what we do. And so exactly, like working, using nature in your
Yeah.
art makes you more, it makes you closer to nature, makes you want to know more about it. And then,
Mhm.
wow, for me it's like, really, now I have found the two things that really move me, and
Mhm.
that I think it can be very inspiring for other people to, like, we were discussing with some people into ecology, like
Right.
art can be a really good way for
Mhm.
people who is not into caring about the environment and the planet, because many more people is into art. So let's use art for
Well,
people.
and science is behind us, right? Like scientifically, we know that our mental health improves when we are outside, and our mental health improves when we have an interest or a passion or get into a state of flow through
Mhm.
perhaps art or yoga or a walk or all of the things that we've been talking about. So we've
Mhm.
got science on our side as well for these really great ideas. And
You're right.
speaking of great ideas, do you happen to have a project or a technique that our listeners can try?
I Yes, I do have one.
Okay.
Since I think, and after all, we spoke about jelly plate.
Yes.
Everybody may have tried or heard or can find a
Yes.
video about jelly plate, and that's
Yes.
easy. Well, that's easy, but difficult at the same time, because it's hard to take all the material what we spoke. I thought a
Yes.
very, very easy material, or an easy project, that will make you go to the
Yes.
forest or garden or anything. Even if you live in the city, go and find a park, go
Mhm.
close to nature.
Yep.
If it's autumn, use the last days of autumn, pick up leaves who are on the floor. If it's not autumn and you don't go right now, you can do this project also respecting the plants
Sure.
without the need to break it.
Yeah.
Take any paper, tissue paper, something which is not really, really thick. For example, I took this, it was like this on a shoebox from the
Oh, yeah.
left.
Some garbage. I love it. Tissue paper. Yes.
Exactly. So, as I
Yes.
was telling you, that's what I wrapped. It was around because I'm
Perfect.
repurposing. Then take a book, or if you have something strong like this,
Like a clipboard,
um,
something solid. Mm-hmm.
what I'm doing is I'm just putting the paper on a board, and
Mm-hmm.
between the paper and the board, take your leaves.
Okay.
So
Ooh, that's a pretty one.
you can choose, but most leaves have two sides, and the side with more texture
Yep.
should be touching the paper. And then grab any wax crayons that you may
Yep.
have at home. You can also use pencil, but wax crayons work really cool, or charcoal, for example. That
Yeah.
I will tell you why I like this, and just rub. Now I'm doing it very quick, but rub the
Yes.
paper. And this we didn't speak. We spoke about the shape of the leaves, the color of the leaves, but the texture of the leaves is amazing. And of course,
Yes.
also the shape of the leaves. And what I tell you is go and keep nature like this. That's why I said you can respect nature, because you don't need even to grab the fern. For example, you need to grab the leaf from some tree or plant,
Right.
because you can do it outside and then take the
Well,
paper with you.
and then, okay, so then some folks will say, okay, Clementina, now how are you going to use that? How are you
Exactly.
going to
What do I do
use
with
that
that?
thing? Right. What do I do with it? Right.
Exactly.
Very common question we get.
And then that technique, by the way, is called frottage. It comes from French, which means rub,
Mm-hmm.
to rub.
Yeah.
And what do I do with that? First, I use it as fodder for my journal.
Yes.
So
So it
and
becomes
I
collage
need,
fodder and it goes into the art journal.
but it
Oh,
doesn't go. Oh,
look
sorry.
at
It doesn't
that.
go.
She's showing us a 2-page spread in her art journal that's just, and those are all like rubbings.
This one is a
Yeah.
rubbing. So what I did is I mixed this rubbing, which is very soft paper, tissue paper, with
Yeah.
real leaves, with some writing, and here there's also some rubbing. Why? This tissue paper, it's not just collage, it's decoupage, meaning like you
Yes.
use um, the medium, which is
Yep.
both glue and varnish at the same time. So
Yeah.
you can work in layers. So
Right.
I showed you a journal page, but you can use this. Is amazing for decoupage. So you can get any object you want and
Right. I
cover
love the
it with leaves.
transparency too. Like, so if you use the tissue paper and let's say in your art journal, and for those of you listening, if you might not do an art journal or a junk journal or a visual journal, it's just, it might be something you want to try because the idea is it's a practice space where we're not going for museum quality completeness. What we're going for is like practice and a journey and having fun and playing around. And so the idea is that you can do anything in this art journal that you want to. And some of us work in 2-page spreads, some of us do one thing at a time. Like, it doesn't really matter. There are absolutely no rules to a visual journal. And so the idea, in this layering is that you just keep building up the layers. So maybe you have script on the first layer and it doesn't even need to make sense. And then maybe your second layer is one of these rubbings on tissue paper so that when you decoupage the tissue paper on top of your text, you're going to see it and it's going to look so cool. So I love this idea so much. And it's probably something that many of us did like in elementary art school and probably just forgot about because it's a good one.
I love these projects that we
Mhm.
learned when we were young, and then we take them to a different level. I
Yeah.
want to say different level because then, yeah, maybe we just wrap and got the shapes of the leaves. But now
Mhm.
here is you use like tissue paper. You can work in layers. You can add some texture, add some paint,
Yeah.
the writing you were mentioning, or even because I know you have crafty listeners that as you
Yes.
that want to do something more with
Mhm.
their hands, they can just get any like a glass jar, empty glass jar from whatever, and do the decoupage around this jar,
Oh, yeah,
and
that's
then
a
put
good
a
idea.
candle inside. So you have
Right.
this translucent paper with the shapes of the leaves, but still the colors of the paper, and then you have a lantern and also get a piece of furniture, small cupboard, and cover it with these translucent leaves. So there are many options. Once you have the paper with the leaves, go and
Right.
use
So
YouTube
many things. Well, and
everywhere.
I would imagine that my listeners will give that a try and that they just needed to be reminded. And, I think another fun thing is, we talk a lot about playfulness in
Mm.
art. And that sometimes I was talking about this recently. I was talking about, creativity, because people ask me a lot, like, how is it that you're so creative? Or they'll say, I'm not creative, Jolene. How did you get to be so creative? And I honestly think that creativity is a muscle. I think that if you don't practice it and if you don't stretch it, you might feel like you're not creative. But if you allow yourself the opportunity to play and experiment and kind of dabble, then creativity becomes, it reveals itself, at least in my experience, more often because I've allowed myself the space to practice and play and try and not really care so much about outcome.
I cannot agree more, because that's how I start my courses. I do some
Yes.
very simple exercises for them to realize that there's nothing else than playing and doing. So
Mm-hmm.
if you allow yourself to try and not focus on what will come out of here, just trust the process. And anyway, the process is what's really important when you're
Mm-hmm.
creating. Enjoy, play, try.
Right.
Don't be afraid of mistakes, because there are no mistakes. And
I
that
agree with you.
I completely agree. We need to play and create every day, and that's what will make us create, that will develop this muscle we already all of us have.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, and something too, like, I think that it's hard for people to let go of outcomes in life, in art, because we have like a productivity race that we're on. And like, if something great doesn't come out of it, it feels like wasted time. And I think that that is just a mind shift, uh, like a mind think, like it's just a shift that needs to happen. And something else that I've learned is that there have been times when I've been practicing and playing and I've made something and I have been not at all pleased with the results, and I'll put it away, forget
Mhm.
about it, and then find it later, think it's amazing, and wonder what was happening. Like, what was my judgment that I didn't like it when I made it? Because now I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. So I think sometimes too, it's just a little bit of distance and a little bit of perspective, and it all comes together eventually.
Yeah, I sometimes also think that it's true. It's just a shift, but it's hard, and it's
Yeah, yeah.
especially hard in real life. So that's why it's good to practice in art journaling, and that's why I like about my
Mhm.
art journaling meetings, like where okay, just do whatever. You don't like it, it's okay. Maybe in life it's harder, but here we are using mixed media. You can have another layer on top of it if you don't like it.
Yes, exactly. That's so true. To keep going. Keep
You
putting
don't
on
like
more
it.
layers.
Exactly. So it's fine. But it's true that sometimes I also try to do, okay, you don't like it.
Mhm.
It's fine. That's what we got to do in 2 hours.
Right.
Go and so it depends on the character and the personality of the person. I say one thing or the other. Like, don't worry, go at home, you will give it
Mhm.
another layer. Or sometimes I say, okay, let's try to. So I
Right.
think our journaling is so good
Mhm.
to learn to go with the flow in life, because it
Mhm.
has so many metaphors about this
Yeah, it
creativity.
helps,
This,
right? It helps with all these things that we're talking about because it's like a playground. It's like a place for it to all, kind of practice these things that you and I are talking about. So if you aren't an art journaler, or even if you don't want to call it art journaling, some people call it visual journaling, junk journaling. It's got all kinds of names. My friend Suzanne, the editor and publisher of Strawberry Moon magazine, she says anything that goes in a book. Like, okay, you're absolutely right. Anything that goes in a book counts. So,
good
well, before
point.
I get to our final segment where I have a bunch of questions to ask you, I do just want to tell folks a little bit about what's going on at Big Raven Farms. So, we have recently released our schedule for our 2025 retreats, and I'm very excited to say there's a little something for everybody. We have 3 cooking retreats coming up in 2025. Lots of pick your own projects, and that's where you go through a list of my projects, pick the ones that you want to learn how to do, and when you get to the farm and at the retreat, I will teach you how to make those. We also have yoga. We have art journaling. We have a retreat for folks who are in healthcare specific to them. We also have, we're doing resin. We're doing a beginner's resin retreat this year. We're doing yoga and tarot. And is there anything that I'm forgetting? It's quite possible, but you'll have to go and look at the page. I will be sure to link it here in our show notes because, there's only 14 spots per time. So if it's something you're interested in doing, you want to make sure that you reserve your spot. So thank you for listening to that. And then another thing that folks usually ask me about is what is on my work table? Well, I've got lots of things on my work table, a few things I need to get done. I'm delivering some commissions next week, so that's pretty exciting. But I also, so you know how people use like pennants, like flags as garland, and sometimes those flags can be made out of burlap, or maybe you crochet them, or maybe they're made out of macrame, and like you usually hang them over like the hearth of your fireplace, and it makes a really pretty garland. Well, I recycled some wallpaper sample books, and the covers on these wallpaper sample books were humongous, front and back. So I had these really big pieces of bookboard. So I cut them on my bandsaw in the shape of a flag for a pennant, which would end up being a garland. And now my next step is I'm going to cover all of that in recycled bookboard. Okay, so you're visualizing that, right? We got the book board on top of the book board. It's going to be awesome. The thing that I need to solve, and I'd love to hear your ideas, listeners, if you have any on this, is the book board will be kind of heavy. And as it hangs from my fireplace, I don't want it to spin or like hang kind of forward. I want it to, hang straight. So I don't know that twine or macrame cord will do the trick, not even ribbon. Like I need something a little bit more rigid so that as it hangs, you can see all the fronts of these amazing book covers. Does that make any kind of sense? This is usually what my projects sound like. You're going to do what?
I want to say, I want to see it too. I want to see how you manage.
Right. I was thinking jump rings, but then I wasn't like, jump rings through, but then I wasn't sure what I'm going to attach it to. And I want it to have like a swoop, like a garland. Mm-hmm. So anyway, more to come on that. And if you have ideas, I'm going to need little fix-it help on that one, listeners. So thank you.
We'll give it a thought and then write to you.
Right, exactly. Try write it if you have to, but let me know your ideas on that. Well, I can't believe that we're already to this section. So, Clementina, I know you've seen our show and you've heard it, you've heard the podcast before. And at this point, I ask everybody the same set of questions, and you can just give me one-word answers. You can elaborate, but it just helps us get to know you a little bit better. And the first question is, what is your favorite word?
Creativity.
I like that one too. I like creativity. I also, right now, because I'm going to be seeing my family on Friday through the weekend, my favorite word right now is like nestled. Like I just can't wait to have everybody home and like nestled in, and I can't wait to, and I'm trying not to like have such high expectations, that I'm disappointed, but it's like, I want to do puzzles and I hope we do a craft, like I just can't wait to hang out. So right now mine is nestled, which I think is, really close to creativity. Do you have a least favorite word?
I love words in general, and I love words in different languages because it's something it's amazing. I love how they sound in different languages. Yeah. So it was very hard for me to think of a least favorite word unless I relate it to a concept. So for me, word is something that really...
I was going to say that's a good one, but I don't mean it that way. But I agree with you. That word is on the non-favorite list for sure, especially as, there currently are several of them happening. So I agree with you. Do you have a favorite kind of sandwich, or like what is the best sandwich?
We were talking about being emotional before, like with
Yeah.
I'm in general emotional with the past, in or like with memories. So there's a
Yeah.
sandwich that brings me back a memory of childhood, and
Oh
that's a
yeah.
sandwich my father used to prepare for me for school, and that's a very strange mix, but
I
the
love weird combos. Lay it on me. I can't wait.
yeah, are you sure?
Yeah.
Because it's a pate, like
Okay.
pate with
Pate. Yeah.
cheese. It
Okay.
has like, but not spread cheese like the one you cut. So it's spread pate and then a slice of cheese.
Oh, and what kind of bread?
The bread is not really important, but
Oh,
well, no, I'm meaning for the mix. But we
yeah.
usually do it with baguette kind of bread.
Oh, so a little bit crustier, a little
Yeah,
harder. Interesting.
tight but soft inside. So crusty outside but soft inside.
Oh, I love it. Well, okay. So my dad used to make me a sandwich. And it was peanut butter and jelly,
Mhm.
classic. But because I've always had a sweet, salty preference, he would smash potato chips in the middle. So it
Woo!
would be peanut butter jelly potato chip squish, and it's
Wow.
the best.
Okay, I could say I would try, but I'm not sure
Right.
because I know peanut butter with some marmalade is very classic. You said, but it's
Yes.
classic here in this part of the world. So if you add to it the chips,
Mhm.
wow, that's a very strange combo.
Oh, it's so good.
Okay,
My kids do it too. Like it's hereditary. Like I don't know where it came from, but we all do it because it's so delicious because you get the crunch, you get the salt, you get the sweet. It's amazing. But like I said, I like weird combinations.
I
So
see. I see.
so what does being an artist, like you are an artist, what does that mean to you?
That's a very interesting question
Mhm.
because it has changed through my life.
Yeah.
The meaning of being an artist, and
Hmm.
right now I can say being an artist is something to feel proud about
Hmm.
and something that I can say out loud.
Yeah.
And being an artist means that you get the world around you and what you're having inside, what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're going through, and use art to share it with the world.
I love that answer. I love
And
that answer.
and basically I think it's important for people to recognize they are
Mhm.
artists, basically because it took me more than 30 years of my life to go to the point to accept and to say I am an artist, because I
Me
never.
too. Me
So
too. I didn't I didn't know that I didn't know I could claim it. I didn't know that I could say that I was an artist because I've just always been crafty and I'm a maker and I can pretty much muscle my way through and figure stuff out. And it wasn't until my friend Jenny was standing in front of one of my paper sculptures and I was saying something about it being garbage art. And she was like, "You really need to stop that." And she's like, "Could you please just call it art and not garbage art?" And I was like, "Well, but I did make it out of garbage." And she was like, "I really think you need to stop saying that because it's easy for you, but it might not be easy for everyone." And like what she said that day that really helped me was she talked a little bit about how it comes from my point of view. And I guess that like being an artist to me, just I finally feel like I am at home. Like I'm no longer trying to figure out what I am. I definitely am. I'm definitely an artist and I approach almost all problem solving and my life from through that lens. So,
I like it being home.
yeah, it's home. It's home. Question number 5, we kind of like shift a little bit and go back into like, I should probably reorder these, but do you think there is a scariest animal?
Well, I don't know if it's the scariest, but it's the animal that really and for me that's the snake for sure.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
That's the snake.
I know. And I know they're so misunderstood. I know, but I'm
I
with
know
you.
exactly. I know because also even like as a archetype is super
Mhm.
positive in many cultures,
Yeah.
and for me it just listening the word snake makes me mm, like ooh.
You
And if I
know,
see image, and well, the only time I've seen one, then it was terrifying. So no, for me I think it's clearly the snake.
right. And I feel like I need to like, so I told my husband that we had to sell our house because there was a little baby gardener snake coming out between the bricks of the steps of my office on like a really sunny day. And all I could visualize was like Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know, like I was just immediately like brought back to like that whole situation there. Um, and I know they're misunderstood, and like I have kids who love them, and I'm just like, gosh, I, and I don't even know if I could like undo this thinking of mine. Like I think that no amount of exposure is going to change the way I feel.
I've tried to read books about how it's
Right,
important in other cultures and how the mythology,
right.
but I mean it's inside of me, like
I
it's
know,
just
right? Like it's a DNA thing. I'm with you. I totally agree. I totally agree. So, is there a sound or a noise that you love?
I like the running water sound.
Mm, mhm.
It doesn't need to be the river, it's nice, but it can be even
Yeah.
the shower, the shower
Mhm,
water running. I think it's a yes, soft,
mhm.
and makes relaxing sound that I
Yeah.
like.
Well, I've mentioned mine before, but you know, again, the children are my kids are coming home on Friday, all except one, but and we will miss her if you're listening, darling. I'm sorry you can't come. Um, but the sound that I really love is I love my adult children laughing and having conversations and enjoying each other when they don't know I'm listening. Like, because
Mhm.
I'm so proud of who they are and the way that they carry themselves in the world. And they're not perfect or anything like that. Like they're just normal, wonderful, flawed humans. But I love who they are and I love observing when they don't know it. It's probably
So
weird, but I love it.
I can really relate.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there a sound or a noise that you don't like?
I'm not really bad with sounds. I don't have a sound that I hate.
Mm.
Like compared to my partner, my husband, that he has many that he hates,
Oh,
and
me too. He and I could, yes, I have
yeah,
many. I have
and
a
many
very long list.
well, the problem is that I provoke most of the
Oh,
sounds he hates, and that is the worst thing about it. And
oh,
he's
that's awesome.
very tolerant with
Right.
noise and sounds.
Oh,
I feel very guilty to be the one that causes
right.
the,
Well, Darren
something.
and I were playing Scrabble the other day, and you know, Scrabble requires a little bit of thinking, and it was my turn. And bless his heart, he was eating pita chips while tapping his fingers on the table. And I held it so close. Like, I don't think he knew how absolutely irritated. If he's
Yeah.
listening, this is probably a big surprise, but I held it so good. But I was ready to like flip the Scrabble board because I was so frustrated. But I don't like I don't like tappy tappy sounds. You know, like one of my kids leaves his sound on when he's texting, and
Mhm.
it just makes me a different person. I hate it so much.
Well, I mean, I think I could have in the previous question. I could have said that I love the tapping or and the typing. I like this kind of. No. For me, the hating noises need to be like very loud for me.
Sure.
Like construction, like for example, like construction, building construction.
Yeah.
This now that I'm far away from the city and far away from this
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
noises. when I
Mhm.
go to the city, kind of whole city noise, like this
Yeah.
and beeps and construction. That's the kind of of sounds and noise I hate. The
It
smallest
can be
one.
a little overstimulating, can it? Like just a little, like that's how I feel about some of these noises. Like I'm just overstimulated and I demand quiet.
No, no, just the opposite.
Oh, so is there a profession other than the one that you're in that you would like to attempt?
Many,
Oh,
many.
right. Okay.
Like, oh yeah, I had a problem when I was a child. I never knew what I wanted to be when I
Yeah,
grew
same.
old. And after doing many, many things before I went into shadow theater, and now I am also in parallel running this art journaling sessions as
Mhm.
a teacher, as a facilitator. So maybe, who knows, I will do something else in the
Yeah,
future. But for sure,
yeah.
it will have to do with art. And I think now it's a bit late, but architecture, I would have loved to know how to be an
Oh.
architect. And since that's a bit too difficult, maybe something related to very hard scenographies on a stage, like something big and huge related to scenography. That's
Mhm. I
one.
think that I probably could have gone into acting.
Mm,
Um, and I think that I probably would have really liked that a lot, except I was worried I would be poor for a long time. And I think I had some like practical, worries about that as a profession. And so, but always feel like drawn and called, to like, do some theater work and stuff. But then I also feel a little rusty. I haven't done it in such a long time that
mhm.
I don't know. I don't know if I could still do it, but I think about it from time to time.
Yeah, I'm sure you could. It's like the muscle of creativity you were
Yeah,
mentioning. So you just need to try and go and play
right.
with that.
Exactly. Exactly. Is there a profession that you would not like to do? And for
Eh,
those of you in the comments, I want to know this too. Is there a profession you would not like to do?
just on Sunday, I was okay. I will add a craft here inside. I was in a meeting of people in love with origami, like
Mhm.
origami, folding paper.
Yes, I love
And
it.
we were mentioning several things, and then I discovered there's a profession I didn't know it existed, and for sure I would not like to do that one. That's why I have it very recently. It's called traumatic cleansing, meaning there's people who clean. Of course, there must be people, but there's
Oh,
a profession, people who cleans after an homicide, a
yes,
fire, like
yes.
these kind of things. And then I mean, I had never heard of it, and then I met somebody
Mhm.
who was doing it, and he was sharing how he used origami to relieve
Ah,
all the stress of
kind
his
of
work.
purge.
I understand,
Mhm.
and I thought, wow, it's great you have origami, because imagine you don't have a craft or a passion. And
Right.
it's very clear in my head because it's 2 days ago that I am thinking
Yeah,
that
that you heard.
somebody is
Yeah.
doing that, and I
Well,
don't think
I
I could
mean, I think it
do
takes
it.
a very special person to be able to do that because, I mean, it's unfortunately so necessary. But I'll tell you where my brain went. When you were talking about origami, I got all excited thinking there was like an origami job. like like a
Um,
quality tester or like a full-time origami like folder, and I was like waiting for it to be like, oh my god, I want that job because I love origami so
no, I'm sorry, I didn't get to, but probably
no
origami there could be a job. Like one week,
right.
I think.
If there is a job, I totally want to know about it because I love origami so much. I've done lots of projects where I incorporate, folds into what it becomes at the end. But I to your point about those folks who do that cleaning, I don't think I could do it either, but I'm so grateful
Of
that there
course.
is somebody that does. I mean, that's one of those jobs for sure. Well, and I guess here too, already I'm at my final question.
Mm.
Um, so Clementina, what brings you the most happiness?
Ah, when I don't want to seem, I never thought I would be saying this, but the laughter of my child gives me a lot of happiness. So I would say the day that I have the time to have a small walk in the forest, have some time for creating something in
Mhm.
my journal or whatever shape it takes. And then I have time also to spend with my daughter and she laughs, then it's
Mhm.
a complete day for me.
I think that's a great answer. And I mean, I agree with you. And like I mentioned, my children are grown-ups. Like they they are traders. Like they all grew up and they moved away and like they have like grown-up lives and grown-up jobs. And um, but I do love, I mean, I've always loved hearing them laugh. And even if it's cliche and even if it's what all the moms say, it's
Mhm.
true, right? Like it's such a great sound and I 1000% agree with you. It's almost like it's like if you could bottle it and open the bottle and hear it. And I want it to be a bottle because it's different than like a recording. Like I want to have, like the big reveal of poop, and then there it was. I will have to invent that because I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, I
So,
like it. I really like it. I can
well,
see it.
well,
I can see
Clementina, I will be sure to link in the show notes how people can find you, how they can find your article in Strawberry Moon Magazine. And I thank you so much for being, I mean, from Barcelona, thank you so much for being here. I really
it.
enjoyed our time together. Thank you
Me too.
so,
It was
so.
a pleasure.
Oh, awesome. And for those of you who are going to join us next time on Wednesday, December 4th at noon Central Time, Frankie Leroux will be here. And Frankie, oh my gosh, she is an artist and she has had her artwork at my company, Big Raven Yoga, for going on 6 years. And she does like really cool pinup girls with tattoos and Persephone and like some really cool like fantasy type artwork that we've put on yoga mats. So she has been one of my guest artists for so long, but she's going to be here with me next week talking about her art. And I am absolutely excited. So I hope you will join me then. And Clementina, thank you again. And for all of you listening, we will see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye.